Hey everyone, so today's box opening video is a little bit different from the box openings I usually do on my channel. Usually it's a doll or some kind of outfit or pre-made items, but today's box opening is actually a doll sewing kit. So it's going to be a fashion from a list of outfits that the shop has designed. As you can see, the seller is Emily's Doll Fashion, and they have a shop on both AliExpress and Taobao. I've purchased from their shop on both of those sites, and there's pros and cons to each, and I'll go into a little bit more detail as we unbox the items so I can share with you my personal experience. It comes in a really pretty pastel box, and it's taped up, and this actually has quite a bit of heft to it, but you can see that it comes with cards with the store name. It has information on the back, as well as a photo of the item that you will be making. This one is the Daphne, and you can see that it is super pretty. And they have a variety of sizes for multiple dolls, from like 1/6 like Blythe all the way up to 65 centimeter dolls. But they also say that if your doll is more of a different, size, measurements are a little bit different from what they typically have for, the standard sizes, that they will modify the pattern for you. So this doll kit has been customized for my doll Chateau Stacy. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I measured the doll and provided, you know, all sorts of measurements to the seller, but until I actually make it and see what it's like, can't really attest to how that service is. So I figured I would film and document my experience with this and I guess post updates, and hopefully this will be helpful to people who might have questions down the road. So the kit has everything you need to make the item pictured. And let's go through it. So here we have some crystal rhinestone appliques, and the directions were sent to me via email, and you can ask for them after you receive the box. I guess that's just something they do. There is a lot, a lot given in this kit. So I was a little bit surprised by how much you get, and that was one of the things I saw in the reviews, is that you get enough to almost make multiple outfits. And again, can't really say that until I actually sew it, but I feel like there's just a lot of materials so that if you do mess something up, it's not game over. You can still salvage what you're making. So that's honestly pretty cool, because sometimes with a lot of kits, you notice that there's only like one or like two, and you're really cutting it close in terms of materials. So it's nice that the kits are pretty generous with what they give you. Here is a light tulle. And then we also have some woven cotton or a cotton blend, but it feels like a very nice high quality, things that you'd find in high-end blouses. It just feels really, really nice to the touch. So we have that, and that's probably going to be used to like make the bodice. And then we have some more lace as well. So based off the picture here, it looks like we have that for the skirt panel, as well as parts of the sleeve, and then there's like a little veil. And then we have little baggies full of additional materials. So I'm pretty sure that this wire here is going to be used to make the headdress or crown, as you see here. And there's various trims, and they're really nice because they're also in scale with the doll. Always a plus. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same trim for all sizes, but it works perfectly for the 1/3 scale doll that I purchased. And I believe this is like a 1/4 scale doll. Can't remember the maker. It's in the directions, but the trims look great on her too. So can't complain. So you can see that there's a variety of trims here. And then we also have beads and chains. There's that sparkly stone for the center of the crown. And you'll embellish it with pearls. So that should be quite fun to put together. So these pens are refills that you'll use in order to trace your pattern. But the cool thing about them is that once you apply heat to it, the line should disappear. They don't include a pen portion, but they include the refills, and I think it can still work the same. So if you have the pens that these fit, then that's great. But if not, you can just use them as is. And then afterwards, we have some thread, a needle, 2 pins, and some glue. So very cool. I don't think that these pins would necessarily be enough when it comes to sewing, but I already have a pin cushion of a variety of pins, so it shouldn't be a problem. I put all this back in so I don't lose anything before I even actually make the item. And then I can show you what else we have in the box. Oops, I don't think that belongs in there. Here is some felt, which I believe is used to shape the crown. And it's about a 2mm poly felt. It's sturdy, but I'm not sure if I like how it looks given how white it is, and some of the fabrics aren't as white. But I do have, you can see here the comparison, but I do have some wool felt that I might actually layer on top just to, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so we have that. And then here are the pattern pieces. So they printed on a very sturdy craft paper. And I almost think that this is sturdier than the grocery paper bags that I get. But you can see how large it is really. Pulling it up, it's almost bigger than me. But you can see that everything is documented on this pattern paper. You can see the skirt. That's actually one really large skirt panel. And we pull this. So that's pretty much the kit. I mentioned earlier that you can also buy this on Taobao, and on AliExpress, it's almost like twice to 3 times more than how much they charge on AliExpress. But with AliExpress, you get free shipping. And I noticed from Taobao is that shipping is super, super expensive, especially as the freight rates have gone up for a lot of companies. And on some of the Discords that I'm on, expensive shipping is just part of it. So if you pay like $100 to $200 to get a doll shipped to you, it's pretty normal. But again, like the cost you save on the goods plus shipping, at the end of the day, I feel like it's almost kind of the same. And one huge drawback is that if you do order from Taobao, you do get the directions, but they're uploaded onto a third-party site that only allows you to download files like individually. And if they're over a certain size, which is not that big actually, so pretty much like PDFs and videos, they surpass that. And so you have to download a third-party program in order to download said files. And I don't really like installing software from companies that I don't know onto my computer. So that was a headache, and I ended up paying somebody to help download it for me. It was just a thing, right? So shipping plus trying to get the files, like it ends up being a hassle. And I'm not sure if that's something that a lot of people would necessarily want to go through, but since I've already was kind of invested, I figured, okay, let's just do it. But again, that's just another step. So I feel like you can't go wrong with either. I do have to say that the customer support from the seller on AliExpress is fantastic. Like they're super friendly, super sweet, and I have nothing but really positive things to say about them. Even people who probably have mistakenly bought, these kits thinking that they were going to get an item because they didn't read the description, they're super nice, even if they leave like 1-star feedback and say, hey, why did you leave this? Can you reach out to us? So I always like it when companies aren't crazy aggressive about that in when they respond to feedback. So the seller also said that if there's any questions I have, I can reach out to them. And after looking at some of the directions for some of the kits that I have, there might be some because I think some of the techniques involved in making these items, just upon first glance, it's a lot more complicated than things that I typically make or have sewn, so I can appreciate a higher skill set. But it always makes me slightly nervous just because it's a more complicated technique and it's like step-by-step photos, but I feel like some of the directions aren't exactly on point just because of translation issues. So we'll see how this all goes. But for now, I'm really looking forward to testing out this Daphne kit and sharing with you like the end results of putting it together and making the item. So that's going to definitely be one of my 2022 goals, is to make these sewing kit items for my differently sized dolls.
Eventually.
So here is Daphne on the postcard, and here is the outfit that I made. I was watching the footage that I took of the initial video, and it's been about a couple years actually since I filmed it, but I did make this item, which I'm really proud of. Comes with a beautiful helm or headpiece, whatever you like to call it. And there's rhinestones that were ironed on. They're also at the base of the veil portion. And I'll talk about some of the construction techniques and changes I made when making this. So the headpiece I actually made last, but I'll talk about it first. As you can see, we stitched it to the base over here with the whip stitch. And one of the construction things that I did change was that the trim I actually hand sewed on. I really do enjoy hand sewing. I find it very relaxing, and I think it tends to make sewing a little bit more special, especially in garments. So I don't mind it, and I think it looks a little bit nicer, although you probably can't tell because of the overlay of essentially power mesh on top of it. And then I hand sewed on this gem and did it this way. It's a little bit different in the directions, but however you sew it on, there's no real right or wrong way to do it. And I use my own metallic embroidery thread. So that's pretty much the headdress, headpiece, helm, whatever you like to call it. And then here is the dress. So I'm actually very proud of this because this is probably the first garment I ever sewed that was a lot more complicated than the things I usually make. And for me, after sewing a couple of these kits, I really think that these sewing kits are essentially like master classes, maybe not masters, but like advanced sewing classes that you normally won't find in a typical pattern. And I say that with some confidence just because I have purchased probably a pattern from almost every pattern maker on Etsy, and some of them are not great. Some of them are really good, but I feel like none of them in terms of technique are as advanced as some of the sewing kits that I actually have made more recently. So looking back on it, and like I said, I rewatched the video. I actually don't think that this was specifically customized to my doll. The dress is an empire waist gown, so this part just needed to fit, and you essentially do gather to it, both at the top of the bust. So I think there's a lot more flexibility, especially since everything is kind of like free hipped, free waist once the under bust fits. So these trims I hand sewed on, and I actually sewed a little stitch every 2 balls. And then you can see that it was done along the top, through the bust, and then back. These trims I actually hand sewed on as well too, with white thread. And I guess you could sew it with gold thread, but I didn't really feel like running any specialty threads through my machine just because they can tangle and knot, and I just didn't need to make this project more frustrating for myself. I just hand sewed on the trims, so you can see that there's no like machine stitch going through it. And then even for this one, I also hand sewed it on too. I think it might be actually visible from the reverse. See some stitches there. I really don't mind hand sewing, one of my favorite parts when it comes to doll clothing construction. So for me, not an issue. For some other people, and actually the directions, you can just run a stitch through it. So I did change out some of the materials. It came with polyester ribbon in order to, gather the fabric at the top and in the puff sleeves. And looking back on it, I can see why they did so, just because the polyester ribbon is a lot sturdier than silk. I have this silk ribbon I used, and I really like how soft and flowy it is. In the postcard, I don't think it looks too stiff here, but in real life, I did not like how the ribbon looked, so I chose not to use it. But the silk is almost a little bit too delicate to support the weight of the dress here. And you can see that it could fray a little bit, so you have to be really careful. Like, I'll show you where there's like a little slight nick in the ribbon. It's over there. And I put a little bit of fray check on it as well, so it wouldn't, fray a little bit more. But I don't necessarily regret it. I do like how delicate the ribbons flow, and it is a nice effect, but I can't say it was the best decision. Not a bad one, but not the worst. But not great. So it is what it is, right? But that's what I did by replacing out the ribbons. And then you can see that the inside there is a lining, and that's the power mesh. And the directions don't have this, but I actually went in and put in French seams into the side of the power mesh just because I think it's a nicer finish. And why not, right? Let's see here. Well, this is actually the back of the dress sewn together. And you can see all the rhinestones that were ironed on. I thought they gave too many, but I see why they gave a lot, just because if you mess them up, but you really do use a lot of it because it's used essentially along the entire hem. And it actually adds like a nice weight to the dress at the bottom without having to add a hem. This is just the ends of the lace. And of course the lining, you can't see it, it fits underneath it. So I really like that effect. One thing that I did encounter was when I was ironing on these rhinestones, I did use a pressing cloth, and the pressing cloth melted because my iron got too hot, and I was really surprised by that. So just keep in mind when you're working with like synthetic fabrics or something different, you just keep an eye on it. I'll include some photos up of my doll wearing them, and you can see how it looks on her. Right now my filming setup doesn't accommodate such a large doll to fit in the frame, so I'll include pictures so you can see it. So moving forward, if I were to purchase these kits, I actually would probably buy them from AliExpress instead of Taobao. I purchased many kits through Taobao, but you have to use a proxy buyer to help you buy them, and on top of it, the proxy buyer may be inconsistent about what can be shipped. So the kits come with pens, which are considered liquid by Superbuy, so those are a hard no-go. If you get the pens in there, they will not ship them to you, and you have to opt for a more expensive shipping method, or you can ask them to throw them out. So I have them throw it out because I have pens, and I'm not paying an extra, essentially, literally not joking, $50 to pay for a more expensive shipping method to have pens shipped to me. Before I had the sewing pins, they include like a few of them, and Superbuy had no issue with shipping out the pins to me, but then more recently they had issues with it, and they refused to ship the sewing needles because they considered them as like dangerous sharp objects. So I could not get them to ship those out to me, so those also went into the trash. And if you're somebody who's looking for like, I guess, the full kit experience, you're going to get missing pieces depending on what agent you get from Superbuy and how they feel that day. So if you buy directly from, I'll include a link to Emily's store in the description box below if you want to purchase a kit, but keep in mind that her store has actually changed from when I initially filmed the first video, and I think some of the feedback she got from some of her buyers, people were very shocked to see that they got a kit versus finished item. So yeah, so that's pretty much the first kit I ever made, and I made a couple more. I'll also include a reference link to Den of Angels where a user posted about these DIY kits, and I actually posted more information about them and what I made. So if you're in there, you can see what I made as well, some of the incomplete ones too, and check it out. Alrighty, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.